All right, so you want to bet on basically anything using the blockchain, right?
That's what we're diving into today.
We're not talking about your grandpa's sports bets either. This is Web3. And specifically, we're talking about Polymarket. You're basically buying and selling the likelihood of events, like it's like a stock market, but for the future.
It really is fascinating stuff. What blows my mind is how platforms like Polymarket are totally cutting out the middleman. Instead of going through a traditional bookie, it's the entire crowd's wisdom. Or maybe their folly, who knows? But they're the ones that determine the odds.
Okay, so let's say I'm totally new to this whole blockchain betting thing.
Hmm.
How is Polymarket different from, like, just placing a bet with, one of those traditional companies?
Well, imagine this. Instead of some company dictating what you can and can't bet on with Polymarket, it's the users themselves who propose and create these markets. Almost anything you can think of. Elections, new technologies, even the weather.
So way more options. But what about the actual bets themselves? Are we talking about like complex wagers with spreads and odds and all that?
It's actually refreshingly simple. Polymarket mainly focuses on yes or no outcomes. Will this event happen, yes or no? Super
Ah,
accessible, even if you're not a seasoned gambler.
yeah, I like that. It removes some of the complexity. So how are the odds determined then? Because with those old school bookmakers, it always felt like they had some like secret formula hidden in a vault somewhere.
That's where the real magic of Polymarket comes in. It's all determined by the wisdom, or lack thereof, let's be honest, of the crowd. As more people buy into a specific outcome, its price goes up. It reflects the collective belief in how likely it is to happen. And the best part is, everything is out in the open, completely transparent. It's all governed by these things called smart contracts, which are basically like lines of code that execute automatically based on real-world events.
Smart contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds futuristic,
Mm-hmm.
but also a little confusing. What exactly are they, and how do they actually work in this context?
Okay, picture a vending machine, right? You put your money in, make your selection, and boom, you get your snack. Smart contracts are kind of similar. They hold the money, or in Polymarket's case, cryptocurrency, and then automatically release it to the winner based on the outcome of the event. No need to trust some shady third party or anything. It's all automated and transparent on the blockchain.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do these smart contracts actually K&OW who won? Like, are they reading news headlines or something?
Not quite. That's where oracles come into play. Think of them like data feeds that give the smart contracts reliable information from the real world. These oracles basically make sure the smart contracts are always up to date. So when the event actually happens, everyone gets paid out accurately and fairly.
So it's like having a network of, like, super reliable reporters feeding info directly to the vending machine. That's wild. This is on a whole other level. But now I got to ask, if the odds are being determined by, the crowd like we've been talking about, doesn't that mean someone could, like, game this system? And what about these oracles? Can they really be trusted?
Ah, fantastic questions. That gets right to the heart of some of the challenges and potential vulnerabilities of this whole technology. It's a little bit like the Wild West out here. But honestly, that's what makes it so exciting.
Now that you mention it, it is giving Wild West vibes. Especially when you hear stories about people like Vitalik Buterin, you know him, the co-founder of Ethereum. He's got this whole strategy for Polymarket.
Oh yeah, Buterin's an interesting case. What's fascinating is that he's not really known for taking big risks. His strategy is all about finding opportunities where he thinks the crowd might be overestimating certain outcomes.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying he's betting against the crowd? That seems kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does, right. But Buterin's strategy is to consistently, well, not consistently, but he looks for those long shot events, the ones that people think are very unlikely to actually happen, and he's betting on those.
So it's like he's finding those, like, tiny discrepancies between what people think will happen and what actually might happen. Kind of like an arbitrage opportunity, but with, future events.
You got it. It's all about spotting where the crowd's emotions might be skewing the odds, and then bam, you capitalize on that. And get this. Buterin suggests this whole strategy could actually yield some pretty consistent returns, like something like a 3% annual percentage yield.
A steady 3% just by betting on the underdog. That's wild. It's like he's found a way to make the uncertainty of the future work for him, not against him.
Man, it makes you wonder, what other, hidden gems are out there in the world of Polymarket?
Speaking of hidden gems, is there, like, a way to track what these big-time Polymarket players, these whales, are up to? Asking for a friend, of course.
Well, your friend is in luck. There's actually a public dashboard called Dune that tracks the activity of the most profitable Polymarket users. They're often called, get this, Polymarket whales. Kind of like those high rollers in a casino.
Polymarket whales. I love it. Okay, I can already picture it. Laptop open, coffee in hand, just analyzing all the moves these masters of prediction are making. Where can our listeners find this Dune dashboard if they want to check it out?
Let me grab that link for you. Okay, you can check it out at dune.com/coinist/polymarket-profitable-trader feed. Be warned, though, it's a total rabbit hole of data. You might find yourself lost in the world of Polymarket for hours. Haha.
Consider that a friendly warning from the deep dive team. So we've been talking a lot about the mechanics of Polymarket, with these smart contracts and oracles, and it all sounds incredibly sophisticated, but it also feels like there's, I don't know, like a lot of trust involved. What if something goes wrong?
You're not wrong to point that out. The reliability of those oracles is absolutely crucial. If they're providing inaccurate information, or even worse, manipulated information, it could throw the whole system off.
Right, that makes sense. It's like, imagine having this super high-tech vending machine, but it dispenses the wrong snack because someone messed with the inventory data.
Yeah.
So are there, like, safeguards in place to prevent something like that from happening?
That's where things get really interesting. And it's definitely an area of ongoing development in the whole blockchain space.
So it sounds like we're not quite at trust but verify yet. More like verify, then maybe trust a little.
Yeah, you could say that. Like with any new tech, it's important to understand the risks and the limitations for sure. But honestly, that's kind of what makes this space so dynamic. It's constantly evolving, changing.
It's like the Wild West, but for making predictions. All this talk about, like, oracles and market manipulation, it makes you wonder, could Polymarket be used for more than just, like betting on who's going to win the next season of whatever reality show is popular?
You're onto something. This isn't just entertainment or even just like pure speculation. There's a growing group of people who believe that these prediction markets, these poly markets of the world, they could actually have a real impact on the real world.
Okay, now you've got my attention. How could, like, betting on Polymarket possibly influence stuff in the real world?
Imagine this. Thousands or even millions of people putting their money where their mouth is on all sorts of different events. That creates a massive amount of data, and that data reflects what everyone thinks, their sentiments, their predictions about the future.
So it's like we're crowdsourcing insights into the future, basically.
Exactly. And researchers, analysts, they're already figuring out how to use this data, like to make better decisions. Think about predicting supply chain issues before they happen, or forecasting election results with crazy accuracy, even anticipating potential crises like way ahead of time.
Wow, that's incredible. And also, maybe a little tiny bit scary, to be honest. It's like we're stepping into some sci-fi movie where the future is being shaped by, like, algorithms and bets.
It's definitely a brave new world, and it brings up a lot of big questions. Ethical questions, philosophical questions. How do we make sure these markets are fair? How do we prevent manipulation? And probably the biggest question of all, who gets to see and use this data? And how do we make sure it's used responsibly?
Definitely a lot to think about. But hey, that's what makes these deep dives so interesting. We started with this, like, simple idea of prediction markets, and now we're talking about, like, the fate of humanity.
It's been a wild ride for sure. Hopefully everyone listening will want to learn more, maybe even get involved and help shape the future of all this.
I love that. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Polymarket and these Web3 prediction markets. Hope you learned something new, maybe even challenge some of your assumptions. And hey, if you're a little more curious about the future than you were before, we've done our job. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep diving deep.